I believe the college football playoff format is going to change today, and it benefits the Big 12. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Hoy es el día, the national championship between Washington and Michigan. And today is the day that we're finally going to get some sort of clarity out of the College Football Playoff Committee, who is set to meet and at least toy with the idea of restructuring the 12-team college football playoff to a 5+7 model. That is a lot of jargon that might not make a lot of sense. And if you're a first-time listener, let me unpack it. If you're an everydayer, a long-timer, I'm sure you get part of this, but it is complex. It was originally a 6+6 model, meaning 6 conference champions, 5 conference champions got into the college football playoff. And then the best conference champion from the group of 5 would also get into the CFP. So it was almost, 5 of the most elite teams in the country from the best conferences in the nation, especially when the Pac-12 existed, back when there was a Power 5, and then one team who won the AAC. Is effectively what it would have been, a 6+6 model. But then, with the death of the Pac-12, now there are only 4 power conferences. What are we going to do? Now there's been a proposed 5+7 model that can go into format starting next season, 2024. We'll see it next year. Now, the Power 4 being the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC. The reason there's not a 6+6 still, again, is because the Pac-12 went away. But with this, there's a little caveat. This is something that, according to CBS Sports, a real deal, it'll be talked about today. There is a have-nots. Those the have-nots are going to be able to get in a 6+6, and that Washington State and Oregon State, with the fact that they are still technically the Pac-12, can get into the college football playoff by the way the rule is written, as well as some team from outside of the Power 5. Now, what's wild is somebody already met. The college football playoff could change this formula to a 5+7, and the CFP Management Committee, that is composed of commissioners and school presidents, approved a 5+7 model. That was back in November, and now it's going to be approved likely by the College Football Playoff Committee itself. Here's the complex part of this. There are a lot of ins and outs here. Kirk Schultz is on the College Football Playoff Committee. He's the president at Washington State. So why would Kirk Schultz put his team at a disadvantage based on the rule, the way the thing is written? And this is why I thought that Oregon State and Washington State would go to the Big 12 originally, which is still on the table with eastward expansion. I'm not going to say that is completely ruled out over the course of the next 5 years at all. I will say, knowing that we won't get that for at least a year or two, or those two teams finding their way into a power conference for a little bit, it does sound odd to say that this, which has to be a unanimous vote, would go through when Kirk Schultz gets to vote. Basically, why would the guy who's the president at Washington State vote for his team to not get the 6+6 model? Because according to the 6+6, if the Pac-12 is still considered a Power 5 and Washington State and Oregon State are still technically Pac-12 teams, because remember, they won that lawsuit, they got all the assets in the Pac-12 by virtue of the NCAA's grace period. They have a couple of years where they can still be considered the Pac-12 based on most of the stuff that's on the paper. It's on paper right now. They should get a shot. The winner of Oregon State and Washington State, those two teams should get a shot at the college football playoff based on what is already set in stone. And the only way to truly change what is set in stone is for the committee to vote on a different model, the 5+7. Now, I'm going to get into later how the 5+7 actually benefits the Big 12 more. And we, the Big 12, who are not currently associated with Washington State and Oregon State, should vote. We should be in favor of the 5+7 model. However, what is most fair is tough. What's the right thing to do here? Because according to, by rule, by what I'm reading with the contract here for the college football playoff, is that 6 teams get it. 6+6 is what was originally voted on. And while, yes, the college football playoffs management committee approved a 5+7 model in November, that doesn't exactly mean it's going to take effect. They need the actual committee itself, with Kirk Schultz on it, to come in, and the board, I should say, to come in and vote. And that board is not slated to meet until now. Now, like today, they're going to come together and we likely get an answer over whether or not this board with Kirk Schultz on it actually wants to move forward with the 5+7 model and hurt his own team. So So, like, what's the right thing to do? Do we hurt Washington State and Oregon State, who are still the Pac-12? I mean, they got left in the dust, so they wouldn't have had an opportunity to go to the college football playoff without the Pac-12. And, well, the NCAA says there's a grace period, and you still are the Pac-12, so should we give them a shot? But then again, is that fair to everybody else? Is that fair? Say that a Washington State makes it into the college football playoff over a really good 10-2 Kansas State team. I wouldn't be very happy with that. You probably wouldn't be very happy with that. An 11-1 Kansas State team even. What do we do that's the most fair here? I think the most fair, and it sucks, the most fair way to do this is to go to the 5+7. And I also think Kirk Schultz knows that. A lot of the sentiment that I'm hearing from different sources, and even aside from sources, actual beat reporters that are on this, from a CBS to a Yahoo and to even the big names and blue checks on Twitter, are pretty much in agreement that Kirk Schultz is folding. He is recognizing what is best for college athletics. And instead of bringing pushback, instead of giving the no vote, it needs to be a consensus vote for this to change from a 6+6 that allows Washington State and Oregon State to duke it out for one of those spots. It takes a unanimous vote to change that to a 5+7. It takes Kirk Schultz saying, you know what? Okay. And for the betterment of the rest of college athletics, I think he's going to do that. While this is certainly a headline and certainly something we have to talk about, the thing that stands out the most to me is that I think Kirk Schultz, despite getting the short end of the stick, is going to do the altruistic thing. He's going to do the right thing and move to 5+7, which gives more opportunity to the Power Four to get somebody in. And I guess technically now we have to decide where Washington State and Oregon State fall, because remember, of the 5, 4 of those are conference champions. The next best one is a conference champion from the group of 5 level. It's going to be a conference champion from that level. So like an Air Force possibly, could be at SMU. Could it be a Washington State and Oregon State if they run the gauntlet on their makeshift Mountain West schedule? I don't know. We got a lot to figure out with those two teams. That's why I thought they would be in the Power 5, because there's a lot to decipher over there. So could we work them into a TV deal for somebody else? And obviously that hasn't happened yet. So while that's put to rest for at least a second, we got to figure out the change of the college football playoff format that I think is coming with a vote from Kirk Schultz, how it's going to affect everybody else. I don't know. Can I be a little transparent here? I can't guarantee you this is what's going to happen. Maybe there's a ton of pushback from the college football playoff board that has to be unanimous. So much so, a ton of pushback from NCAA fans that love Washington State and Oregon State. The Kirk Schultz says, you know what? I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to stick with my guys. I'm voting no to this. We stay 6+6 with the NCAA grace period for 2 years. One of those two teams, Washington State and Oregon State, will get in, and they will share the college football playoff revenue. That's the same thing that I posed to you a couple of months ago. I guess that's possible. And it does benefit what Kirk Schultz wants. But again, most of the sentiment that I've heard from across the landscape of expansion and beyond is that he's ready to fold and do what's right for the rest of college football, and that's move it to a 5+7 and not effectively toss a layup, a gimme, a softball to Washington State and Oregon State. It will be the right thing to do. Was the right thing to do for the Pac-12 schools to leave those two behind? No. But it had to be done. Otherwise, a Utah gets lost, just like Washington State and Oregon State are. And now they're going to have to pay for it, but the Big 12 is going to win with this. The Big 12 will benefit from this 5+7 format. I'll explain that next here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. This past weekend, I said the NFL is on, and I know that there are some teams who are resting their starters. Some teams just don't care to be here. They already know they have it in the bag. And there were some teams who had more to play for, a la the Dallas Cowboys. So I went to FanDuel and said, I'm going to bet on the teams that need to play well. Now, some of them didn't do so hot. Jacksonville Jaguars looking at you, but the Cowboys did, and I made money at FanDuel. NFC regular season is wrapped up, but there's still time to get into the action during the playoffs with FanDuel. Get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right. $5, $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, live, same game parlays. You got best bets in the Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. The Big 12 is going to benefit from a rule change from the College Football Playoff Committee. While so far that's 5+7 format is not official. We don't know it's official yet. The management committee, College Football Playoff Management Committee approved it. Now we need the CFP board to approve it. And I think when that happens, when Kirk Schultz says, fine, and the 5+7 is installed, the Big 12 is going to benefit greatly because now with the death of the Pac-12, we're deciding that 7 at-large teams can make it in, and that gives one more spot for the Big 12 to not just get 2 teams in, which was probably going to be typical, but now your shot at 3 is a lot greater. Here's a good example. Let's look at 2022, the final AP poll of 2022. TCU is obviously in a 12-team playoff. Utah, you are also in a 12-team playoff, and Kansas State is in a 12-team playoff. In 2022, by virtue of the fact that now there is one less conference champion that's going to get in, those 3 teams easily, like no debate, get into the college football playoff. That's in 2022. What about 2021? Let's take you back a little bit. Baylor, they were a top 5 AP poll finisher, period. They get into the college football playoff. Oklahoma State, who lost the Big 12 championship, they get into the college football playoff. Look at Cincinnati, who went 13-1. Now, look, I'll give you this. I mentioned Utah in 2022 and Cincinnati in 2021. I know they weren't in the Big 12, but I'm pitching you a scenario in which there could be teams. Like, listen to this. Cincinnati at 13-1, Baylor at 12-2, Oklahoma State at 12-2. That's a real thing that could happen in the Big 12, say, next year. Obviously, Baylor and Cincinnati are down, but listen, let me change the teams. Listen, bear with me here. Stay with me. Kansas State finishes 13-1. That's a college football playoff team. Oklahoma State finishes 12-2. That's a college football playoff team. Utah finishes 12-2. That's a college football playoff team. And back in 2021, Oklahoma also went 11-2. Utah went 10-4. We are opening the door. We are opening the door for the Big 12 to get not just 2 or 3, but maybe in a crazy nuts year with the way this thing is built, with the way the schedule is, 4 teams in the college football playoff. You're just saying, Drake, how is that possible? 4 teams in S to Okonomia? Right. It would take some finagling. I can give you 3 pretty easily, right? The 5+7 model, 7 at-large bids, and you already get 1 team into the playoff. You already get 1 team into the playoff based on the conference champions. So say that Oklahoma State goes, 12-0 in the regular season, goes to the Big 12 championship. They lose the Big 12 championship to a 12-0 Colorado, right? And I'm not even looking at the schedule here. I'm giving you all hypotheticals, but just bear with me for this. In that scenario, 12-1 Colorado and 12-1 Oklahoma State certainly make it in. Colorado being a Big 12 champion, they're going to get undefeated Colorado at 13-0. They're going to get in, and 12-1 Oklahoma State, they're going to get in. Well, then what if you're like, hey, wait a second, we got this team that was tied, got kicked out of Kansas State finished at 11-1, and they got kicked out of the Big 12 championship game, but they're 11-1. We can't let them out, right? We can't leave them out. So yeah, you got to let them in. And you're like, hey, well, Utah's 10-2 back here. And they're a really good 10-2. Can we give them the last at-large bid? Obviously, there'll be a conversation. It depends on what happens in the SEC. It depends on what happens in the Big 10 and the ACC. We already know the Big 12 is valued higher than the ACC. You got a leg up there. The Big 10 and the SEC could eat each other alive. That's true. 16 teams, though, a non-divisional format. There's a way the schedules line up to the Big 12 having a couple of teams undefeated in the conference championship game, which doesn't often happen in the SEC, by the way. A couple of teams undefeated in the conference championship game, and then a couple of teams behind them with 1 loss. In that scenario, the Big 12, with an added at-large team in the college football playoff, has a real good shot at getting not just 1 or 2 or even 3, but 4 teams in. Hey, look. You're screaming, you're throwing things, your kid's crying in the back because you're thinking there is no way the Big 12 could ever get 4 teams in, and you're a dreamer for saying it. You're right, buddy. You are right. What about 3? 3 is great. If there are 4 power conferences in college athletics, and the Big 12 gets 3 teams in the college football playoff, making up a 4th of the CFP, that is awesome. That is awesome. We already know the champion of the conference gets in. If the loser of the conference championship game is also going to get in, the way the format's set up with 7 at-large bids, there is no way. There will never be a season. There will never be a season where the Big 12 doesn't get 2 in. That just it won't have their 12 teams. There will never be a scenario where the Big 12 doesn't get 2 in. That should not happen. You could make the case this would be the lone year where it's possible because the way that Oklahoma State's non-conference evened out, the number 2 team in the Big 12 won't finish as a top 12 team, the regular season at least. So yes, possible, but I'm saying it's never going to happen. With 2 teams guaranteed a spot, then all I'm asking is somebody to go 11-1 and miss the conference championship game, or somebody to go 10-2 and still have the resume, a Utah to go 10-2 and have the resume to finish at 11th in the country. Looking at the recent AP polls, Utah, 10 wins, 10th in the nation in 2022. That's pretty feasible. Ole Miss in 2021, 10 wins. They finished 11th. They were in the top 10 going into the Sugar Bowl. They lost to Baylor. Utah that season at 10-4. They finished 12th in the country. We have seen a plethora of teams win 10 games and be in the top 10. Win even like 9 games in the regular season and be teetering on that line. That gives me confidence that with an added at-large team, it's going to benefit the Big 12, who is bound to have fringe teams. Sure, but now there's one less team on the bubble because the Pac-12 doesn't have an automatic bid. When Kirk Schultz says, fine, whatever, you guys win. I'm going to do what's right for college football and go to the 5+7 format. 5 conference champions, basically 4 conference champions, the conference champion of the best at large, whatever the verbiage they end up wanting to use for that is. And then 7 other teams. I'm confident at least 2 of those teams are going to be Big 12. And yes, in a crazy year, and I know the stars have to align, but there could be 4. And I would like that very much. This change, 5+7, is great for the Big 12. You know, it's not great for the Big 12. Basketball officiating. Never really has been. Welcome to the league, new guys. Get used to it. TCU, let's talk about it. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Jace Medical. Thank you to our friends over at Jace Medical for sponsoring Locked On and Locked On Big 12. I know we came for sports talk, but let's talk about the reality, crazy realities of life for a second. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if a loved one got sick while there's a supply chain issue. Thankfully, we'll be okay with Jace Medical. That Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat anything pretty much, a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinuses, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jacemedical.com. Complete your physician encounter today. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. Save money. Could help save your life. Never been more important to prepare than today. Go to jacemedical.com. Use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. jacemedical.com. Use code LOCKED on today. Big 12 basketball officials suck. That's something that we've got to get used to. And I've got something for you here, TCU. I am pissed, royally pissed, that they would call that a flagrant foul. It wasn't. And if you're out there and you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to go watch it. Because Hunter Dickinson takes kind of a hand-elbow thing, and the officials review it. They call it flagrant, and it wasn't. It shouldn't have been, and Kansas wins the game. I've got a couple different thoughts here. One, are we shocked? Big 12 officials are not very good. I was watching multiple Big 12 games on Saturday, and one thing that stood true was, this is kind of embarrassing. From an officiating standpoint, there's some embarrassing moments. 2, it's Kansas. If you're a Kansas fan, can you just admit for a second that being the Big 12's powerhouse team, you benefit from time to time from calls? Most of the time, the home team does. You see it a lot. The home team, the crowd gets behind them. The referee can get flustered, and that's what happens. I'm not saying that this game was rigged against TCU, but it looked kind of nasty at the end. We can all agree it wasn't a flagrant foul. Third thing, I am usually a proponent of fans fan, coaches coach, players play, officials officiate. We all kind of stay in our own lanes, and whatever happens, one sector doesn't really have a ton of control over the other. That said, in this scenario, I get why you'd complain, because that was bad. It wasn't good. But, and I know I keep going back and forth here, I'm just trying to find a way to justify this. It was a terrible call. There was a minute to go and TCU had a chance. It's not like it was the last call of the game that ended everything. TCU still had a shot. I know that there are free throws. Hunter Dickinson gets an opportunity. Kansas capitalized fully on a bad call. Kansas won the game in the end on a bad call. Did they overall win the game? Only because of that call? No. TCU still had a shot. But it was awful. And guess what? We're not going to remember it. I don't think we're going to remember it in 2 months. We shouldn't have to. TCU, just go win the rest of your games. Really impressed. Really impressed. You could have won. I'm not going to say you should have won. I'm not going to say you should have won. 81 points in Allen Fieldhouse is huge. Houston over West Virginia. Yep. Houston fans, it's that easy. It's that easy. It's good for you. Welcome to the Big 12. You're going to be fine. It's just that easy. Just get cocky. Your 34-point victory. West Virginia. Oh, boy. I really thought, blue collar program, they can fight back. They didn't. Cincinnati. Oh, dude, I'm impressed with Cincinnati. The same Cincinnati team that I thought, you know what? They're probably not going to be there. They're probably not going to be great in the Big 12. Wes Miller, baby. 12-2 record now for BYU. Hey, question, front row here. What if, and hear me out, playing better defense and maybe doing something that's not shooting threes would be like something we could do? I thought it was so nuts. The amount of, was it like 44 threes? I'm pulling up right now because I screenshotted a quote that was so golden. It is Pope saying, I like the 46 attempts. I would take 46. The disappointing side, we missed 33. Yeah, no, what? Yes. Aha. Yes. Yeah, that's the problem with taking a lot of three-pointers is what if you miss? Can the defense back you up? The answer for BYU was no. Cincinnati, great win. BYU, 12-2 might turn into like 13-10 soon. I don't know, man. You can't live and die by the three in the Big 12. And that's going to be a problem for Baylor. It's the reason that Baylor only had 60 points going into overtime against Oklahoma State. They had a bad shooting day. Thankfully for the Bears, Oklahoma State is just bad enough that Baylor could shoot the three-pointer very poorly and still lean on its defense, though often poor. Not poor in standards of the Big 12. I think they're 13th in the Big 12, 12th in the Big 12 in defense. Although often poor, Baylor had enough defense to get a 75-70 win, closed out against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, this is not good. This is not good. Like the SIU loss, this is not good. I like Mike Boynton a lot. I've been at a lot of his press conferences too, and have always appreciated Mike Boynton. There's going to be a tough conversation there. Iowa State, the best defensive team in the Big 12 statistically, second best to Houston, but the best according to Ken Palm, shot quality. 71-63. I thought Iowa State would win this game at Oklahoma. OU, maybe you're legit too. Create depth in the conference. Texas Tech. Yes. We were all rooting for you, buddy. 78-67. Not only did you lead at halftime, you closed out the game. That was my question. Can they close out the game? You made the right hire. Grant McCasland was the right hire, and he went into Austin and beat a top 25 fraudulent Texas team. I said it on the radio on ESPN Central Texas this week. I think of the current top 25 teams in the Big 12, Texas is the most likely to miss the NCAA tournament. I had to put money on it today. Yes or no? Will Texas make the tournament? I don't know if they will. I know there's one loss, but they're going to end the year as a bubble team. Last four in, last four out. That's my prediction. And then UCF, welcome to the Big 12. We weren't lauding Kansas State as like the team to beat. They've had a lot of stuff going on, like President Linton being like overstepping, Jerome Tang being unhappy with the way that some things have been handled. This was like kind of your shot to impress a little bit, even if you lost. Impress a little bit. Yeah, it's bad. Kansas State, I give you some credit. Yeah, you won the game. I got to give you, but UCF, that was my takeaway. It was just that was stinky. I don't think UCF's going to have a very good year this year. That's okay, though. That's okay. You guys are good at football, getting better at football. That's your saving grace. A national championship in football tonight. It's basketball season for me. Rooting for Washington because Washington is just Texas Tech. Yeah, I said it. Washington is just Colorado. Washington is like what a normal Big 12 team could be. They're outside of the realm of teams that I thought could ever win a national championship. I have like a list of 12 teams. These are the only 12 teams that will ever win a national championship in college football ever again. Washington's not on there. They could break my rule. They might. And then it would show that like what is keeping I don't know, TCU from being a Washington. What's keeping one of these big Utah from being a Washington? I don't know. They could do it. Let's root for Washington because they are us tonight. This has been It Always Will Be. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Locked On. Thanks again for making it your first listen every single day, I guess. Dose Grande.